Are you ready for phenomenal thought leadership from the most well-respected leaders in industry? Join us for stellar conversations and sound advice from trailblazers who have a passion for excellence. Learn best practices that will catapult the culture of your company into a new level of greatness. Welcome to Great Companies, Great Leaders. Your host is Christine Gannon. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Great Companies, Great Leaders. I could not be more thrilled this morning to have with us Dr. Carol Poore. Carol, welcome.
Thank you, Christine. So excited to be here.
It is just truly an honor to have you with us. I can't wait to talk about your new book. I can't wait to talk about Strategic Impact Fridays, which everyone should be joining and learning more about strategic planning. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, I want to share a little bit about your background with our audience. So Carol is the president of Poore and Associates Strategic Planning and the author of Strategic Impact, which you can see in the background there, a leader's three-step framework for the customized vital strategic plan. She published it during the pandemic, which kudos to you. Honestly, publishing during a pandemic is no easy feat. So Carol provides strategic planning expertise for corporate, nonprofit, and social sector executive teams, expanding organizational capability and strategic impact. Her vital strategic planning framework, which she's going to talk a little bit about, has assisted client organizations with innovative growth and turnaround, strategic fundraising, venture capital development, and storytelling, branding, identity building, and civic engagement. Dr. Poore's executive background includes serving as a marketing and business startup executive at one of the nation's largest private water and public utility companies, Salt River Project. So for those of you in Arizona, know that this is SRP. She has served as the Vice Provost at ASU at the West Campus and serving as CEO at the Southwest Center for HIV/AIDS, raising more than $23 million in donor and grant funding to grow the agency. Carol received her Ph.D. in public administration, her MBA and Bachelor's of Science in journalism and broadcasting from ASU. She serves and has served on a number of nonprofit and community-based boards. So Carol, welcome. So I want to start out a little bit about how did you get here? You published a book. I know you've published many other articles and have an amazing background. Can you share with our audience, how did you evolve to this stage?
I'd be happy to. Strategic planning has been such a huge part of my entire career, from the water power utility, where I was in a strategic planning group for about 5 or more years and helped the utility start up a subsidiary company, which was a very strategic move when we thought deregulation was going to sweep the United States. And then going to higher ed as a vice provost, helping to run a campus of Arizona State University. I was able to bring in external constituents as part of various strategic planning efforts for not only the campus itself, but for the 4 colleges that we served as an umbrella. So under the campus was 4 colleges, and each of those deans really needed a lot of support and insight as far as where is the college going, who does the college quote unquote compete with around the world with other similar academic areas of offerings. And so then when I moved into the nonprofit world, strategic planning was critical for my time overseeing an HIV/AIDS organization, but it could be any nonprofit organization. The organization needed a strategic plan, and we were able to execute and implement 3 years very successfully. And then we did another one. So I was with that organization for about 6 years. And as a result of the focus that strategic planning created with the board as well as the staff, we were able to accomplish things that were incredible, including the fundraising part of it. So I put everything I know about vibrant, vital strategic planning into a very usable book that has a framework that is clearly understood about the 3 parts. And we could talk about that in a few minutes, but that's how I got to the book. I started writing the book about a year before the pandemic. And just before everything started to shut down in 2020, I pitched it to about 5 different publishers, had 2 offers right away. And I went with Fast Company Press because I've been a Fast Company magazine reader
Me
for a
too.
long time, ever since that magazine started up. And so I'm so proud of my publisher and the work that we've done together. And the book launched in January of 2021.
Congratulations. That is awesome. So, and you also host something called Strategic Impact Fridays. What is that about?
I do. I decided to begin a gigantic experiment of having a very informal but very substantial meetup every Friday from June till the middle of December this year for strategic planning sharing. And so every Friday from 11 a.m. Arizona time, which happens to right now be PT Pacific time, I convene anyone that wants to meet up to learn more about strategic planning. And we have CEOs from around the world. We have strategic planners. We have organizational strategy experts that want to learn new techniques. We have a topic that we cover for about 20 minutes, and then we blow it open to all sorts of share, compare, Q&A. And what I found is this is a niche topic that is not frequently shared, especially among consultants. And we know that there are lots of great consultants out there. You're one of them. I'm one of them. But there are these consultants that will come in the strategic planning world, and sometimes it's a foggy process. Strategic planning has gotten a bad rap for being very mysterious. You don't know where the organization is in the process. And I have seen consultants charge 6-figure stipends, and the organization still doesn't have a strategic plan, doesn't know where we're at with the process. It's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. And so I wanted to really demystify the framework so that everyone knows it's a workshop or a series of vibrant, vital meetings that lead to strategy and strategic goals. It is a written strategic plan that can be digitized and parsed out in social media and all sorts of other ways to get the key messages out. And it's the system for tracking and ongoing communication to keep all of the team involved with what we're getting done and what we've accomplished so that we can actually celebrate the results. So that's the framework. It really demystifies it. It's not simplistic. It's not templatized, but it is very thorough so that anybody, even if it's a nonprofit or a smaller company that doesn't have the budget to hire a consultant or come in to facilitate the work, at least the leader will know how to get started, what to do, and how to make sure it's a thorough process.
Absolutely. So I'm encouraging you, if you're listening today, you're a leader at some level, you're interested in leadership. And so I will ensure that the link for people to join your Strategic Impact Fridays is in the comment section so people can join. I wanted to say something else about strategic planning. What I've found is that great strategic planning aligns to the mission and vision of the organization. And it makes it so easy when you talk about communicating with the rest of the team, how that alignment is happening. And it really creates momentum and motivation around the plan because people can see this is what we're working towards and this is how what we're working on aligns with that strategic plan. So super important. You and I could probably talk about strategic planning all day long as consultants for sure. Do you remember this? I'm dating myself, but do you remember when people used to do 10-year plans and 5-year plans? And you know, I know people still do that, and I'm not coming down on them hard about that. But you know, really, strategic planning is so much more than that. It became shelfware at times, right? We did our plan, and now it's on the shelf. It's not that anymore. And you're showing how it doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be really fun and very clear.
Absolutely. And one of the things I talk about in my book is that strategic planning should be life-giving to the
Yes.
organization and life-changing for the participants. And some people have asked me, Carol, is that hyperbole where it's life-changing? What do you mean by that? And I say, yes, it is life-changing because every person that participates in the strategic planning workshop process or the series of meetings, if it's a longer process, they can feel like their input counts, that they're learning from their peers. It's a
Right.
learning process. It's a sharing process where there's discovery and shared discovery. And that's what enables people to then set the strategic goals and then figure out the annual operating goals, what we're getting done this year. And to your point earlier, the length of the strategic plan is going to depend on the industry. We know that change is so rapid now that 3 years can seem like an eternity, and so much can happen out in the marketplace. For some organizations, such as biosciences and pharmaceutical companies, they may have an 18 to 24-month strategic plan time horizon,
Mhm.
whereas maybe the nonprofit world or other companies will go
Sure.
years, but you rarely see like a 5-year plan anymore. The only industries, and I can speak from experience, that have like 30 to 40-year forecasts are your water and power utilities and
Sure.
your companies that really need to plan resources out into the future, such as water supply. But that's not a strategic plan. That is a resource
Right.
plan. So I
Absolutely.
hope that helps to clarify for your listeners.
Absolutely. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about the environment we're in right now. So, with hopefully we're coming out of COVID, hopefully we'll be in post pandemic mode at some point here in the near future. I don't know that we could claim that yet, but leaders have had to do a whole host of things that either they were prepared for or not. But strategy almost went out the window because we really weren't sure what to expect, right? We hadn't been through this in our generation. So, what advice would you give to leaders today around strategic planning in this somewhat shifting environment?
Well, there's a lot of talk about being agile strategic planning, agile strategy. And what that means is that you set a plan, you're communicating that plan, you're getting your team together at least monthly to measure what you're getting done. But when there is a crisis or there is a sudden change or an episodic event, you can't just be fixated off into the horizon as if nothing's happening. You've got to address that. What does it mean for us? What could it mean for us?
Right.
And then you regather the decision-making team and you are planning some short-term strategies and goals so that you can now start to chop away at those. It's not a matter of now just staying on course for this 3-year plan that without recognizing that we have a major situation, we have cash flow issues, we have customers that are dropping, we have whatever the situation is. And so many businesses did turn and create new opportunities from this crazy pandemic that nobody would have even thought of a few months earlier. So there's no perfect science about strategic planning, and there's no perfect way to strategic plan, but there is a framework that creates a solid approach. And within that framework, you can customize it. And that's why I have the word customize in my book title. It's customizing a vital plan process. But with a crisis situation, you have to come address it and then test the waters. There may be things that you want to test and quickly shy away from if it's not working and try another situation. And I've seen this in the nonprofit world where, for example, I was working with a garden, and the garden had a panel of other garden leaders from across the United States. And one garden leader with a very vibrant garden, this is a public garden,
Sure.
they said that they turned their cafe, because they couldn't be serving food, into a gift shop. And they
Hmm.
turned, yeah. And so that now they had several gift shops on site, and people were coming to the outdoors and to appreciate the garden. And they were having strict rules about how many people came in at a time. But the point is, they pivoted from what was this one use of a facility to another to bring in the extra revenue that they were losing on the cafe side. And so that's just a simple example, but it was really profound for this organization.
A couple things that you said. So I'm hoping will give our listeners grace and peace, because if you have a framework to work from, and yours is simple but so profound, that framework can help you in any situation. So you're dealing with a whole lot of uncertainty, whether it's COVID or something else,
Yeah.
but you have a framework to come back to. And I love what you said, that there's no perfect way to do it, because now I'm relaxed. Now I can jump in and roll up my sleeves and realize I don't have to be perfect. I can just function within the framework.
You really can. And one of the best outcomes from having a strategic plan is aligning your board of directors and your constituents, because people want to know what they're aligning with in a company. And being able to put
Absolutely.
that out high level on your website, that here's our vision, here are our 4 major strategic goals, or whatever you want to publicize. Obviously, you're not going to publicize your trade secrets or your proprietary information, but being able to align everyone and your various constituents to that plan. And I find, especially in nonprofits, where you have sometimes a board of directors where there's 1 or 2 board members that have individual hidden agendas. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I'm talking about something that's so politically incorrect right now, right? But it's so true. You have somebody that is way off over here because they've got their own agenda to either make themselves look good or powerful or whatever it is. And, the strategic plan brings people back. The leader can say, well, that's a great idea, but here's what we agreed to as a board of directors as far as our future.
Right.
And maybe we can explore this over here, but here's where we're going. And it can really keep things on track when sometimes there may be some motivation to derail something. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm sure the listeners can relate if they've ever served on a board or been an executive director or CEO of a company.
It almost serves as a plumb line and can reduce a lot of the friction in a conversation or a decision, right? Does
Yes.
it align to the plan? And if it doesn't, it goes in a parking lot for a different consideration.
Exactly. That's very, very true. And I think the biggest consideration once an organization has a strategic plan is how that plan will be tracked on an ongoing basis, and reported and talked about and celebrated. That's what strategic impact, the title of my book, is all about. Not just having a shelf ornament, like you said
Right.
earlier, or a
Right.
doorstop, but to have a real plan that comes alive in the annual operating plan, what we're getting done in the next 12 months,
Right.
year 1. And then after year 1, you recalibrate for year 2 and year 3. So it's a very dynamic process, but it's coming together as the leadership team saying, here's where we're tracking in these various goals. We've got red, we've got green, we've got yellow. And what are we going to do about those things that are still
Right.
red? Right?
Right. Absolutely. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but it really doesn't matter what size organization or if you're for profit or not for profit, because the strategic plan helps you function in a healthy way. And I find a lot of nonprofits, I don't know if you find this, but they forget their business. They focus on the charity and the cause, but they forget nonprofits function as a regular business, and strategic planning is such an important part of that. So glad you brought that up. So you're a phenomenal leader. All your leadership skills, what you've shared, the books that you've written, the articles you've written, the interviews you've given. Share with our listeners who's had an impact on you, who's helped you along the way.
Well, there are so many that it's hard to just nail down one, but there was a female executive at a certain point in my career, and she came into the company. She was a brand new, fresh voice, very confident because she had really been in a man's world, in the oil and gas business. And she was like one of the few females at that time, maybe in the 1990s. And she came in and she was just a delight to work with. She had a great sense of humor. She was confident, but she would
Mhm.
ask pivotal questions. Why are you thinking that way? Why do you see it that way? And she actually had a psychology background, I found out later, which was probably why she was so good at asking questions, but she was stylish. She showed up. She showed up with power, but she was very feminine as well. And I was used to an environment where, women had to try to look like men. Those were
Right.
the earlier days when women were really rising in leadership powers or in leadership positions. And I had never seen such a vivacious, confident woman. And so she was a real encouragement to me. She would take me off to a side and say, why did you say that? Why did you think that? And, it really made me think about myself and grow. And so that was someone that was very pivotal. And when I think back, she was probably the turning point from where I took off from being a very good practitioner to a leader. And I took some of those same
Mm.
skills with me when I went into executive positions. So yeah, that was it really was a jolt in my life. That was a very positive one.
It's awesome when we have those people that we don't miss the opportunity. We recognize it's an opportunity for us to learn and grow from that. Deborah Bateman is one for me. So she was one of my first leaders in my career. And she was exactly that, right? I mean, vivacious and bright and intelligent in a man's world. And didn't matter though. She was a trailblazer. So fortunate for those experiences.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things with the pandemic and all is for leaders to really consider and plan and be accountable for how they show up.
Yes.
Showing up right now is so important because right now, of course, our lives are changed forever. We're going to be virtually showing up. So that means showing up full screen, not, halfway where half of your head is showing or in the dark, right? We know better than that, but we still see a lot of people that do. And, or they're multitasking. You can see that they are multitasking and not
Sure.
leading the meeting or not being present. The expression on your face,
Right.
being able to show enthusiasm is huge right now. I cannot tell you how many board meetings I've been at where there are people and you could see the trouble all over their face and they're supposed to be leading something, but they're not showing up in a way that encourages and inspires. And we need a lot of that right now.
I think it's almost taken our communication to a different level. It's had to, because when we think about being in person, if body language is 80% of our communication or somewhere around that, we're losing that, right? I can't read you as well. I can't read those body language cues. And so it does require a different level. It requires me to be invested at a different level in my communication.
It really does. And I think one of the keys, one of the tips I would give anyone in the future, no matter what age you are, up and coming leaders, as well as leaders that are seasoned and maybe at the end of their career, is this idea of listening. And this is for me too, okay, because I'm one that likes to draw a conclusion quickly and get to the bottom line. But what I'm finding is that we have so many voices out there with social media and the different inputs that when someone is speaking now, I'm seeing a lot of people that just interrupt you and they say the conclusion. They interrupt as you're talking,
Mhm.
or they interrupt each other and they're talking over each other. And when that happens to me, I generally stop the person politely and I'll say, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant to say is, and then I say it. So I think as leaders, if we can slow ourselves down a little bit and not feel like, and I come from a broadcasting background, so come on, I understand about sound bites and saying it quickly, but I think that we've got to slow ourselves down and be more emphatic in what we do have to share. And when somebody cuts you off and interrupts, you can just pause nicely and say, what I meant to say is, and maybe that will be a way that we can communicate in a more peaceful way and not such a frenzied way, because I think we've got too much frenzy going on right now, and it's something we have to learn how to manage it.
Absolutely. And I love Twitter. So, but I do think we've gotten into the Twitter form of communication sometimes. We don't want people to have the rest of their 3 minutes or whatever it is to explain themselves, right?
Right.
So we're cutting them off. And you're right. I love that tip. So what advice would you give to a brand new leader coming into a leadership role in this environment? What advice would you leave with them?
Yeah, I think the idea, besides what I just said, of course,
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
is the idea of taking that longer view,
Mhm.
being strategic. I think being strategic is a huge theme of my life. And looking at the things we do today will contribute to where we are tomorrow. So to not think about just the next social media post or
Right.
comment I'm going to say or make, or activity that may be great for now, but it doesn't really contribute to a strategic future. It's the difference of being in a big ship going into the ocean, and the captain sees the ocean in the horizon. The people that are working with the anchors and the equipment, they're seeing their niche of the world, but they're not seeing where that boat's going. So leaders need to really be strategic and not just think about today and a quick fix, but what are the consequences of my activities, my goals, my behaviors on where I'm going tomorrow?
Absolutely. That could not be more important, honestly. That's great advice. So, Carol, where can people find you? They want more information about the book or your services. Where could they find you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. CarolPoore.com. So CarolPoore.com. I have blogs. I have the Strategic Impact Fridays recorded and posted, and information about upcoming programs. And so I would be delighted to be a resource to anyone that would like some support and program planning for strategic planning, or I can mentor your own team so that you can do it. So thank you so much for asking.
I'm so glad you said they're recorded. I've missed a couple, so I can't wait to go log on and find the recording. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Carol, thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your insights. Good luck with the book.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks so much.
Brightworks Consulting hosts this podcast and YouTube channel to spotlight the leadership around the world that is changing lives. Brightworks offers a myriad of consulting services in the public and private sector, to include diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions for any size company. You can find us at www.brightworksconsulting.com. We're honored to have Best Companies AZ as a presenting sponsor for this podcast. Best Companies AZ is your #1 source for regional employer branding. You can find them at www.bestcompaniesaz.com.